In a luxury store, an elderly black man was ridiculed for browsing in worn clothes. Unbeknownst to the snickering staff and affluent customers, he was the brand's original founder. As his true identity began to surface, a shocking revelation awaited, one that would forever change how they viewed their beloved brand. Don't miss out on this incredible journey. Subscribe now to uncover the secrets behind the legacy. The luxury store gleamed under soft lights, each display carefully arranged to highlight the brand's finest pieces. Elegant chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting a golden glow over shelves filled with leather bags, silk scarves, and polished jewelry, each item seemingly untouched by ordinary hands. Employees, dressed in sharp suits and heels, moved gracefully from one customer to another, offering quiet, practiced smiles and nods of approval. The whole store felt like a temple dedicated to wealth and refinement, a place where every detail whispered exclusivity and importance. It was in this pristine atmosphere that an older man entered, his arrival going almost unnoticed at first. He was clearly different from the typical clientele. His coat, though clean, was worn at the edges, and his shoes, sturdy but faded, had long seen their shine disappear. A small hat rested on his head, and he walked with a quiet dignity that might have been overlooked by those too busy to look closely. The man didn't seem bothered by the stares and side glances from staff and customers alike, although a few employees exchanged a smirk, one muttering under his breath, "Must have taken a wrong turn." Another whispered something about the wrong crowd for a place like this, their eyes lingering on the man's simple attire. The old man strolled slowly, his gaze sweeping over the items on display, pausing here and there to study a handbag or examine a fine piece of jewelry behind the glass. He didn't appear rushed or intimidated, just deeply focused, as if searching for something familiar among all the glitter and gloss. When he picked up a scarf, his fingers traced the edge with a practiced touch, noticing small details that others might have missed. He murmured to himself, something about the stitching being not like it used to be. His words barely reached beyond his own ears, but one of the nearby employees overheard him, shook her head and whispered to another with a smirk, "Guess he thinks he's an expert." As he continued through the store, moving past counters and displays, his eyes softened with recognition. For him, the items seemed to hold memories, hints of something he had once known well. However, the other customers, dressed in designer coats and clutching sleek leather bags, mostly ignored him, casting him quick, dismissive glances before turning back to their shopping. He stopped at a display featuring one of the store's signature handbags, a piece known for its timeless design. The old man looked at it closely, tilting his head, and then whispered to himself, "They've changed the handle stitching. It was never supposed to be this way." He gently ran his fingers along the bag's edge, tracing the stitches with a sense of familiarity. His touch was delicate, as though he were handling a memory rather than a product. An employee nearby, catching his whispered comment, rolled her eyes and chuckled, leaning over to a colleague. "Listen to him. He talks like he made it himself," she muttered, her tone laced with sarcasm. They both laughed quietly, amused by what they saw as an old man's delusion. To them, he was simply an out-of-place visitor, maybe even someone lost in his own fantasies. Unfazed, the old man continued moving through the store, his gaze intense, studying each item as if searching for a deeper meaning. He noticed the logo on a wallet and paused, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face. He murmured, almost to himself, "It used to be embossed by hand with more care." A young sales associate, overhearing him, couldn't help but snicker, brushing past him with a look of mild irritation. "Sir," she said, her voice barely masking her condescension, "these designs are modern updates. Perhaps you're remembering something else entirely." The old man gave a gentle nod, his face calm and unbothered, though his eyes held a quiet understanding that went unnoticed. He didn't argue or try to explain himself, as though he knew that words alone wouldn't change their minds. Instead, he turned back to the items, quietly observing details that spoke to him alone. For him, the store wasn't just a display of luxury, It was filled with remnants of his past, small pieces that reminded him of something he had long left behind. But to the employees, he was just another outsider, a man far removed from their world of polished shelves and wealthy customers. The old man walked further into the store, stopping at a glass case displaying a line of leather wallets, each one meticulously arranged, catching the soft light. His eyes narrowed, a faint look of sadness crossing his face as he scanned the items. He reached out, hovering his hand just above the glass, his fingers tracing the outline of one wallet, almost as if he could feel its texture through the barrier. There was a time when he would have known every inch of these designs, every stitch and fold, every choice of leather. These weren't just products to him. They were once the work of his own hands and vision. His murmurs grew softer, tinged with nostalgia as he observed, "They used to treat each piece with such care. This was once hand-polished. Now it's machine-made." His words barely reached his own ears, but an employee on the other side of the display heard him and let out a small laugh. "You know, sir," she said with a playful smirk, leaning across the counter, "we have a lot of customers who admire our craftsmanship, but it's rare to meet someone who claims to know it better than us." Her tone was light, almost patronizing, as though she were humoring him. The old man simply nodded, offering a small, polite smile in return. He didn't respond to her comment, sensing the condescension in her tone, but his fingers continued tracing the invisible patterns over the glass. He was searching for something, though even he wasn't sure what it was. Maybe a piece of the past that had stayed hidden among the new, something that could remind him of the dedication and long nights he once poured into these very designs. Nearby, a younger, sharply dressed manager noticed the exchange and strode over, his face showing a hint of irritation. "Excuse me, sir," he said, adopting a tone that was polite on the surface but edged with impatience. "Is there something specific you're looking for? I can help you find something in a different price range if you'd prefer." The manager's eyes flitted over the old man's coat and well-worn shoes, making it clear he didn't believe this customer belonged here. The old man looked up, his calm gaze meeting the manager's impatient one. He shook his head gently. "Thank you, but I was just looking around." He glanced back at the glass case, his hand dropping to his side almost reluctantly. The manager gave a tight smile, clearly not reassured. "Well," he replied briskly, "if you're just browsing, I'll have to ask you to be mindful of the other customers and our displays. We take pride in maintaining a certain ambiance here." His gaze flicked over the old man with thinly veiled disdain. For a moment, the old man seemed ready to say something more, perhaps even reveal the thoughts stirring behind his gentle exterior. But instead, he simply nodded, his gaze thoughtful, as though he had seen enough. "I understand," he said softly. There was a hint of something in his tone, a weight of experience, of memories that seemed too large for this polished, judgmental space. The manager looked at him, momentarily thrown off by the calm dignity in the man's voice. But he quickly shrugged it off, turning his attention back to the more affluent shoppers, leaving the old man to continue his quiet exploration. The old man wandered further into the store, moving toward a section that showcased the brand's newest collection. He noticed slight alterations, shortcuts in craftsmanship that others might not detect, but to him, these details were glaring, like changes in an old friend's face. The pieces seemed more like echoes of the originals, stripped of the personal touch he remembered. Each item reminded him of how his vision had once been, and how much it had drifted from what it used to stand for. A small crowd of younger customers gathered nearby, drawn by the novelty of the new collection. They spoke in excited tones, praising the brand's evolution, its modern edge. He listened, smiling faintly, as if appreciating their enthusiasm, but feeling a touch of sadness for the tradition they'd never known. They admired these newer pieces, their praises echoing in sharp contrast to his memories of craftsmanship and care, values that now seemed faded under the glimmer of commercial success. Once again, The store buzzed with the life of people who saw only the surface, the glamour, the status, while the old man moved quietly among them, still unseen, holding memories that none of them would recognize or understand. The store may have forgotten who he was, but he remembered every detail, every piece that once carried a bit of his soul. And though they couldn't see it, his presence in the store held a story waiting to be told. As he moved through the store, the old man's gaze settled on a wall display featuring the brand's most celebrated item, a classic handbag that had once been the pride of the collection. It had been around for decades, with small design tweaks over the years, but the essence was still there. The bag was a symbol of the brand's heritage, a piece that had come to define its identity. He remembered the first prototype, the meticulous work that went into every line and curve, the hours spent perfecting it by hand. This bag had been part of his life's work. He moved closer, his hand instinctively reaching out to touch it, stopping just short of the polished glass protecting it. His eyes softened, and he smiled, almost as if greeting an old friend. He used to be crafted with care, he murmured to himself. Every piece of leather hand-picked, every stitch counted. His voice was barely a whisper, but there was warmth in it, an affection that was palpable, as if he were speaking to someone he loved. An employee nearby noticed him lingering and couldn't resist commenting, her voice light but tinged with sarcasm. "Admiring the classic, are we?" she asked, folding her arms as she looked him up and down. "A lot of people say this bag is timeless, hard to resist." The old man simply nodded, a gentle smile touching his lips. He didn't respond to her tone, but there was a quiet pride in his expression, a hint of satisfaction that the bag had endured all these years, even as the rest of the store had transformed into something almost unrecognizable to him. The young sales associate was clearly curious, though her curiosity was mixed with amusement. "You know, this bag is inspired by our brand's history," she continued, her voice carrying a hint of superiority, as though explaining to a child. "It's one of our best sellers, a symbol of our legacy." The old man gave a nod, and his gaze never left the bag. He could see it as it once was, could almost feel the weight of it in his hands, the supple leather, the familiar scent of new hides in the workshop. This bag had been more than a product. It had been a dream, a vision he once poured himself into. And here it was, decades later, displayed like a relic in a shrine, appreciated by those who saw only its polished exterior. At that moment, the young manager from before appeared again, his sharp eyes noticing the old man lingering too long in front of the display. He sighed, then walked over, clearly exasperated. "Sir," he said with an edge in his voice, "I think you've had enough time to look around. If you're not here to make a purchase, I'll have to ask you to move along." The old man looked at him, meeting his gaze with calm, steady eyes. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a quiet patience that seemed to unsettle the manager slightly. "I was just admiring this piece," the old man said, his voice soft yet carrying a depth that made the manager pause, just for a moment. "It brings back memories." The manager scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Memories, right? I'm sure you have a lot of fond memories of bags you can't afford," he muttered, barely hiding his irritation. "Look, sir, this is a high-end store. We don't usually allow loitering." For a moment, a shadow of hurt crossed the old man's face, but he quickly masked it with his usual gentle smile. He turned back to the handbag, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "Once, this wasn't just a bag," he said, almost to himself. "It was a part of something we cared about, something made with heart." The manager sighed, clearly impatient. Sure," he replied, barely listening. "But this is a business, sir, and we don't have time for nostalgia." Just then, a senior employee, an older woman who had been with the brand for many years, noticed the interaction and came over, drawn by the tension. She looked at the old man more closely, her eyes narrowing as if trying to place his face. There was something familiar about him, something in his expression that tugged at a memory buried in the back of her mind. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, glancing between the manager and the old man, sensing an imbalance she couldn't ignore. The old man nodded politely. "Yes, thank you. I was just admiring the craftsmanship," he said, his gaze still on the handbag, his voice carrying a reverence that was hard to ignore. The older employee studied him carefully, her eyes lingering on his face, searching for a connection she couldn't quite grasp. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, as though some long-forgotten memory was beginning to resurface, just out of reach. The older employee continued to study the man, her gaze lingering on his face with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the years. The faint recognition in her eyes grew stronger, and she tilted her head, as though trying to place a distant memory. She opened her mouth to speak, but the young manager interrupted, clearly impatient with the scene unfolding before him. "Ma'am, I think it's best if we kindly escort this gentleman out. He seems to be more interested in storytelling than shopping," he said, his tone dismissive and laced with irritation. The senior employee glanced at him, a hint of disapproval in her eyes. But the manager didn't notice. His focus was solely on getting the old man to leave, his patience worn thin. The old man's gaze remained fixed on the handbag, a sadness in his eyes that seemed deeper than any passing moment of embarrassment or discomfort. He reached into his coat pocket, drawing out a small, folded piece of leather. It was worn and aged, the once vibrant color now faded, the edges soft with time. He gently opened it, revealing an old business card, one with the original brand logo, a simple, elegant design that predated the current modernized emblem. The senior employee's breath hitched as she saw it. Her hand rose to her mouth, her eyes widening with shock. She took a step closer, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Sir, that logo, that was the original design, used decades ago. We haven't used that in years." The young manager frowned, leaning forward to get a better look, but still dismissive. "Lots of people could have old memorabilia," he muttered, brushing it off. "Collectors, enthusiasts. It doesn't mean anything." But the old man met the senior employee's gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. "This wasn't just memorabilia," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight of history. "It was part of a vision of a brand that once stood for something pure, something crafted with care." The senior employee's eyes widened further as she took in his words, her mind racing back through the years. She remembered stories whispered among the longest-standing staff, tales of the brand's beginnings, of the founder who had once worked alongside the original craftsman, hands-on with every design. Her gaze shifted back to the old man, her heart pounding as a realization began to dawn. You're... Her voice trailed off, a mixture of awe and disbelief washing over her face. The young manager looked between them, thoroughly confused but sensing a shift in the room. The customers nearby had started to notice the exchange as well, turning their heads, drawn in by the unexpected scene. The old man gave her a gentle nod, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. "I was there when it all began," he said, his words carrying a quiet pride. "Back when this wasn't just a luxury brand but a dream we poured ourselves into." A hush fell over the area, the murmurs of shoppers fading into silence as they strained to hear his words. The senior employee looked as if she were seeing a ghost, her hands trembling slightly. Her eyes were fixed on the old man, the recognition fully blossomed in her mind now, the pieces falling into place. Without warning, she turned to the young manager, her voice firm yet tinged with awe. "Do you realize who this man is?" she asked, her tone carrying a weight that demanded respect. The young manager faltered, taken aback. He glanced at the old man, then back at her, clearly uncertain, but still reluctant to believe it. I don't understand," he stammered. "Who is he?" The senior employee's gaze softened, and she looked back at the old man, her eyes filled with a newfound respect. "This man, he's the founder, the original creator of this brand, the man who started it all. A ripple of shock swept through the store. Customers who had been observing from a distance exchanged astonished glances, some covering their mouths in surprise. The young manager stood frozen, his face draining of color as he realized the gravity of his actions, the severity of his error. The young manager's face flushed, a stark contrast to the cool professionalism he'd displayed moments earlier. His mouth opened slightly as if to speak, but no words came. He looked at the old man with wide, uncertain eyes, now seeing him in an entirely new light. The very man he had dismissed, mocked, and attempted to throw out was, in fact, the original creator of everything surrounding them, the very foundation of the brand that had become his livelihood. The senior employee, still in awe, stepped closer to the old man, her eyes filled with a mixture of respect and apology. "Sir, I'm so deeply sorry," she said, her voice soft yet full of sincerity. "I had heard the stories, of course, but I never thought." Her voice trailed off, overwhelmed by the unexpected realization. The history of the brand, something she had always held in high regard, was suddenly standing right in front of her, real and breathing, more than just a tale whispered by longtime staff members. The old man smiled kindly at her, his gaze softening. "It's all right," he said, his voice calm, as if all the indignities he had faced today were already forgiven and forgotten. "The past has a way of fading with time. I suppose it's only natural that people forget." He glanced around the store, taking in the displays, the shelves full of products that, once upon a time, he had dreamed up himself. There was a hint of sorrow in his eyes, but also a quiet pride, a contentment in seeing that his legacy, though altered, had endured. The young manager, still reeling, struggled to compose himself. He took a tentative step forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Sir, I don't know what to say. I didn't realize." He paused, swallowing hard, his expression filled with regret and embarrassment. "I'm so sorry for the way I treated you. If I had known." The old man regarded him with a patient, forgiving expression. "It's all right," he replied simply, his tone gentle. "Sometimes we're too quick to judge what we see on the surface." He paused, letting his words sink in, his gaze thoughtful. "We forget that every person has a story, and often those stories run deeper than we imagine." Around them, other employees and customers gathered, forming a quiet, respectful crowd. Whispers ran through the group, and heads turned as people exchanged astonished glances. A few of the customers, visibly moved, looked at the old man with newfound respect, as if they were in the presence of someone extraordinary. In that moment, the store felt different, its luxurious atmosphere softened by the weight of the story unfolding in front of them. The old man took a slow breath, his gaze drifting back to the handbag, the very piece that had been the cornerstone of his brand. He looked at it thoughtfully, his fingers once again tracing its shape, now fully aware of the audience surrounding him. With a quiet nostalgia, he began to speak, sharing a piece of himself with those who had once looked on him with disdain. "This handbag," he began, his voice steady and clear, "wasn't just an idea or a design, it was a vision, a way to create something beautiful and lasting, something that could be passed down through generations. I remember sitting in my small workshop, shaping every part of it by hand, dreaming of what it could become." His voice softened, his gaze becoming distant as he returned, if only in memory, to those early days of creation. Back then, it wasn't about luxury or status. It was about the art of craftsmanship, about taking pride in creating something well. The crowd listened intently, their expressions shifting from surprise to reverence as he spoke. Even the young manager, who had looked down on him only minutes before, now stood quietly, absorbing every word, his face a mixture of remorse and awe. He seemed small in the presence of the man who had built the very foundation of his career, the brand he'd thought he understood so well. The old man continued, sharing stories of long nights spent perfecting every detail, of the early days when the brand was still small, and of the sacrifices he had made to see his vision brought to life. "We worked with passion," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "We took the time to make things that would last, things that people could hold on to for years. It was never about quick success. It was about leaving something meaningful behind." He paused, his gaze moving over the new designs, the modern twists that had been added to his original creations. His expression was thoughtful, but he gave no hint of bitterness. Instead, he seemed at peace, as though he had come to terms with the evolution of his life's work, recognizing that it had grown into something larger than himself. The senior employee, now visibly moved, stepped forward, her voice filled with admiration. "I never realized how much heart was behind these designs," she said softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "I always knew there was something special about them, but I never knew it came from such a personal place." The old man nodded, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "That's what true craftsmanship is," he replied. "It's not just about making things. It's about putting a piece of yourself into your work. It's about creating something that carries meaning, that tells a story." One by one, the crowd around him nodded, their faces a mixture of respect and understanding. For the first time, the luxury items in the store no longer seemed like mere symbols of status. They held a new weight, a legacy shaped by years of dedication, sacrifice, and love. Finally, the old man took a deep breath, letting his hand fall away from the handbag. He glanced around the store one last time, taking in the faces of those who had once dismissed him, now looking at him with admiration. His expression softened as he gave a slight nod, acknowledging their newfound understanding. Turning to the young manager, who was still standing, silent and humbled, the old man spoke once more, his tone gentle but carrying a clear message. "Respect the people who come through these doors," he said, his gaze steady. "You never know what stories they carry or what they might have given up to be here." With that, he offered a small, forgiving smile, a reminder of the humility and compassion that had always defined him. The young manager nodded, his face filled with regret and respect. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll remember that." With a final, lingering look at the handbag, the old man turned and began to walk toward the exit. The crowd parted respectfully, their eyes following him with awe and admiration. In silence, they watched him go, each person feeling as if they had just witnessed something profoundly meaningful, a moment that transcended the usual luxury and glamour of the store. As he reached the door, he paused briefly, glancing back at the brand he had built. Though it had changed, evolved, and grown, it would always be a part of him, a legacy that could never truly fade. And with that, he stepped outside, disappearing into the bustling street, leaving behind a store full of people who would never see their world the same way again. As the old man left, a heavy silence lingered, filling the space he had vacated. The customers and employees remained rooted, as if the air itself had changed. The young manager, now pale and visibly shaken, stood motionless, staring after him. His mind seemed to reel, replaying the moment when he had dismissed the founder of the very brand he served, treating him as an inconvenience. A wave of shame washed over him, stronger with each heartbeat. He had glimpsed something beyond his understanding, a dedication, a vision that transcended luxury and status. The senior employee gently laid a hand on his shoulder, sensing his turmoil. "You know, we all get lost in appearances sometimes," she said quietly, her voice steady and comforting. "It's easy to forget where things come from, who built them, and what they mean. But what happened today, it's a reminder of the roots that ground us, even when we're too focused on the leaves." She looked at him kindly, her words both an encouragement and a subtle nudge toward growth. The manager nodded slowly, swallowing hard as he took in her words. I didn't see it," he whispered, almost as if speaking to himself. "I only saw an old man and I judged him without a thought, but he was the reason all of this exists. I can't believe I treated him that way." Around them, employees gathered, many of them still in quiet shock. They'd overheard the old man's words, felt the weight of his legacy, and now found themselves questioning the very foundations of their work. To them, he had been just another customer, someone to greet with smiles and sell products to. But now, they realized that he had once been a creator, a visionary who had infused each design with a part of himself. The handbags, the wallets, the iconic items that had come to symbolize luxury, now held a different meaning. They were no longer just products. They were pieces of a man's life, a testament to a journey that had started long before any of them had stepped foot in that store. One of the junior associates, a young woman who had watched the old man with mild amusement earlier, now spoke up, her voice quiet. "I thought he was just, well, out of place," she admitted, looking down embarrassed. "I didn't even consider that he might be someone important, someone who cared about all of this more than any of us." The senior employee nodded, her gaze gentle. "Sometimes we don't understand what people carry inside them." He didn't need a suit or fancy words to prove his importance. He had something more valuable, a legacy. She paused, glancing around at the faces of her colleagues. "We've all learned something today. We need to treat every person who walks through these doors with the respect they deserve, no matter who we think they are." The crowd murmured in agreement, nodding as the weight of her words settled into their hearts. The brand, the luxury they took pride in, was no longer just a name. It was a living history, something built by hands they had all taken for granted. And now, with the founder's silent departure, they felt a responsibility to uphold the true spirit of that history, to honor it with every interaction and every sale. The young manager, still humbled and reflective, took a deep breath and glanced around the store. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a need to atone for his behavior. He knew that he could never take back his actions, but he could make sure that they would not be repeated. Turning to his team, he cleared his throat, his voice carrying a newfound sincerity. "From now on, let's remember that we're not just selling products here," he began, his tone firm yet reflective. "We're part of something bigger. This brand started with a vision, a dream that came from that man who just walked out, and that dream deserves respect. Not only from us, but from every person who walks through these doors." The team looked at him, some nodding, others with thoughtful expressions. The young manager's resolve was clear, his words a promise to the founder and to himself. He knew he had a duty to protect the legacy that had been entrusted to them, to honor the craftsmanship and vision that had created the very products they sold. The senior employee smiled, a quiet pride shining in her eyes. She knew that this moment had transformed not only the young manager, but everyone who had witnessed it. They had all been given a gift, a reminder of the humanity behind luxury, the spirit behind each finely crafted item. One by one, the customers returned to their shopping, each carrying a different perspective. They glanced at the displays with a sense of reverence, no longer seeing mere products, but pieces of someone's heart and soul, something that went beyond price tags and status symbols. In the following days, the store made subtle changes. A small display was added near the entrance, featuring a photograph of the founder in his youth, smiling beside one of his original designs. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "In memory of a dreamer, a craftsman, and the heart behind it all." Each morning, as employees passed by that display, they paused, taking a moment to remember the old man who had walked through their doors, unnoticed yet unforgettable. His legacy lived on, not just in the products, but in the way they now treated every person who entered, with a quiet respect and understanding that went far deeper than appearances. Over the following weeks, the spirit of the founder's visit continued to ripple through the store, reshaping the way employees and customers alike perceived the brand. The once intangible legacy of craftsmanship, kindness, and respect now felt tangible, woven into the very fabric of the store. The young manager, in particular, carried a new humility in his demeanor, a quiet sense of duty that guided him with each customer interaction. No longer driven solely by sales or appearances, he now understood that he was a guardian of something far more meaningful. One afternoon, a woman entered the store carrying a bag from the original collection. Its leather was worn, its corners slightly frayed, but its quality and craftsmanship remained intact, a testament to the founder's dedication. She approached the counter, a soft smile on her face as she held the bag carefully, almost reverently. The young manager noticed her and approached, his curiosity piqued by the well-loved item. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he greeted her warmly, his voice carrying a newfound respect for each visitor. "That's a beautiful bag you have there." The woman smiled, her eyes lighting up with a mixture of nostalgia and pride. "Thank you," she said, her hand brushing over the leather. "It's been with me for years. My father gave it to me, and he told me it was crafted by the brand's founder himself. He spoke of the care, the vision, and the dedication behind every stitch." She paused, her gaze softening. "He told me that this bag was special, that it would last a lifetime if I took care of it. And it has." The young manager listened intently, feeling a connection to the bag, the woman, and the story behind them both. He could almost see the old man's hands in each stitch, the attention to detail and love that had gone into creating something meant to endure. He felt a deep appreciation for the bag's journey, its resilience, and the legacy it carried from one generation to the next. "Your father was right," he replied softly, nodding as he admired the bag. "It's not just a bag. It's a part of this brand's soul. It's a testament to everything we stand for, to the founder's vision." The woman looked at him, a slight surprise in her expression. She sensed that he understood something deeper about the brand, something she hadn't expected from a store manager. "You sound as if you knew him," she said, her tone curious. The manager smiled, remembering the old man's quiet wisdom, his presence, and the lasting impression he had left. "In a way, I feel like I do," he said, a hint of warmth in his voice. "He visited us not long ago. No one recognized him at first, and some of us made mistakes we now regret. But he reminded us of what really matters: the legacy, the craftsmanship, and the respect we owe to everyone who walks through these doors." The woman listened, her eyes widening with understanding as she realized the depth of the encounter. "So he's still out there," she murmured, a look of wonder crossing her face. "Still connected to his work, still seeing the impact of what he created." The young manager nodded. "Yes, he is, and he left us with a lesson that changed everything. We're not just selling bags and wallets here. We're sharing a story that he built, piece by piece, with his own hands." Moved, the woman took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude, "for honoring his memory and for carrying his legacy forward." As she turned to leave, the young manager felt a surge of pride and purpose. This was no longer just a job. It was a mission to preserve and respect the values that the founder had instilled. He watched her go, her cherished bag a reminder that the legacy extended beyond the walls of the store, touching lives in ways he had never realized before. That evening, after the store had closed, the young manager gathered the employees together. He spoke with an earnestness that resonated through the room, each word a testament to the change that had taken root in his heart. "We are here because of a vision," he told them, "a vision to create something meaningful, something that lasts. Every product, every customer, every interaction is a part of that vision. Let's remember the founder's visit, not as a lesson in humility alone, but as a call to be better, to honor his dream, and respect the legacy he trusted us with." The staff listened, nodding in agreement, their faces reflecting a new understanding of their role. They weren't just employees in a luxury store. They were stewards of a legacy, ambassadors of a story that had touched countless lives. And with each day, each customer they welcomed, they vowed to carry forward the spirit of the founder's dream. A dream that had endured, not in the products themselves, but in the hands, hearts, and lives of everyone who encountered them. Outside, the city lights glowed softly as the last of the staff departed, leaving the store quiet, filled with the silent echoes of a story that would never truly end. The founder's legacy had been reignited, and it would live on in every stitch, every gesture, every small act of respect and kindness. It was a story that had come full circle, a story that would endure, just as he had always dreamed. In the weeks that followed, word of the founder's visit spread quietly but steadily among customers and staff alike, taking on an almost legendary quality. Regular shoppers who had heard bits and pieces of the story came with a new curiosity, eager to learn more about the brand's origins, and the employees, once simply knowledgeable about the products, now spoke of them with a personal reverence. They shared the founder's vision with each new visitor, conveying the depth behind every item with pride and respect, as though each piece held a fragment of the man's soul. One morning, a new display appeared near the entrance, subtle yet striking. It featured a framed photograph of the founder as a young man, standing proudly in his first workshop, surrounded by his early designs. The photo captured the earnest focus in his eyes, his hands resting on a table scattered with tools and leather scraps. Alongside the photograph, a brief inscription read, "To create something that lasts is to leave a part of yourself behind. Every piece, a memory. Every stitch, a promise." Customers lingered by the display, some pausing to read the inscription carefully, while others ran their fingers along the edge of the frame, almost as if seeking a tangible connection to the man behind the brand. For those who had never known the story, this quiet tribute offered them a new perspective, turning an ordinary shopping experience into something more meaningful. One day, a young couple entered the store, visibly enchanted by the display. The woman, holding her partner's hand, studied the photograph with a thoughtful expression. She glanced over at a nearby employee, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Is it true that the founder came here not too long ago?" she asked, a spark of wonder in her voice. The employee, a junior associate who had only recently learned of the founder's visit, smiled warmly and nodded. "Yes, it's true," she replied, her tone reverent. "He came quietly, dressed simply, and many of us didn't realize who he was at first. But when we finally understood, he shared his story with us, and it changed the way we see everything here." The woman's partner looked around, taking in the store's polished displays, each item somehow seeming more significant now. "So he's the one who started it all?" he asked, his voice filled with respect. The employee nodded again, her own eyes glancing back at the photograph. "He built this brand with his own hands. To him, it wasn't just about luxury. It was about quality, purpose, and respect for the people who would carry his creations. He reminded us of the heart behind every piece, and he taught us to treat every customer as part of that legacy." The couple exchanged a glance, both visibly moved. They wandered through the store, touching the products with a new appreciation, as if understanding for the first time the depth of care and dedication behind each one. They picked up a wallet, its leather soft and finely crafted, and the woman looked back at the employee, her voice soft. "We'd like to buy this," she said. "It feels special now, like we're taking home a piece of his story." As they made their purchase, the young couple shared a quiet, knowing smile, carrying the wallet with a sense of pride. The employee watched them go, feeling the weight of the founder's influence once more, knowing that his presence lingered in the store not as a shadow, but as a guiding light. Over time, a new tradition emerged. Customers who had come to know the story began returning with their own pieces from the founder's early collections. Bags, wallets, belts, all lovingly kept and still in use. They brought these items to share their personal stories, each one a testament to the founder's dedication, each piece a cherished memory that had accompanied them through milestones, travels, and everyday life. The employees listened with patience and respect, learning about the brand's impact on people's lives beyond the store's walls. Some customers shared tales of inheriting bags from their parents or grandparents, while others spoke of saving up for months to afford their first purchase, seeing it as a symbol of their own aspirations. Each story added a new layer to the founder's legacy, creating a mosaic of experiences that enriched the store's culture. One afternoon, the young manager, now profoundly changed by the founder's visit, decided to introduce a Legacy Day, an event where customers could bring in their cherished pieces, share their stories, and learn about the brand's history from those who had heard it firsthand. On the first Legacy Day, the store was filled with people carrying well-loved bags, scuffed wallets, and faded accessories, each item with its own journey. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, nostalgia, and the sharing of memories. Customers spoke to each other as if they were old friends, united by their love for the brand and their respect for the man who had built it. Employees moved among them, listening, learning, and adding their own experiences from the founder's visit, weaving his story with the customer's own. That evening, as the last of the customers departed, leaving the store quieter than it had been in hours, the young manager took a moment to stand by the founder's photograph, a deep sense of gratitude filling his heart. He reached out and touched the edge of the frame, feeling a connection that went beyond words. "Thank you," he murmured softly, almost as if the founder were standing beside him, hearing his words. The store felt full, not of merchandise or customers, but of a spirit, a legacy that had not only endured but had grown richer, strengthened by the people who carried it forward, one story at a time. The store closed that night, lights dimmed, but a warmth lingered, a testament to a vision that had been rekindled. The founder's legacy was alive, woven into every thread, every word shared, and every person who walked through those doors with a story of their own. And so, his dream continued, carried by all those who understood its worth, each one a silent guardian of something timeless. As Legacy Day became a cherished tradition, the spirit of the founder infused itself deeper into the heart of the store. Employees felt a newfound sense of pride in their work, treating each day as an opportunity to honor the brand's roots. Customers who had once come to the store for luxury now came for the stories, eager to share their own or hear others, forming connections that transcended mere transactions. The store had transformed from a place of business into a living, breathing tribute to the man who had built it with his own hands and heart. Months passed, and the store's reputation began to shift subtly but powerfully within the community. People spoke of it not just as a luxury brand, but as a symbol of authenticity, integrity, and history. New customers came in, drawn by the legacy stories they'd heard. Some even brought family members telling them, "This is more than just a brand. It's a place where history lives." Legacy Day grew each time, with familiar faces and new ones mingling, creating a shared atmosphere of respect and reverence. One Legacy Day, a middle-aged man entered the store, cradling an old leather-bound journal. He moved quietly, almost reverently, toward the founder's photograph. The young manager, who had taken to greeting every Legacy Day visitor personally, noticed the man's demeanor and approached him, intrigued by the careful way he held the journal. "Good afternoon," the manager greeted him warmly. "That's a beautiful journal you have there. It looks like it's been well cared for." The man smiled softly, nodding. "This journal belonged to my father," he replied, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. "He used to work for the founder back in the earliest days, in that tiny workshop before the brand became what it is today. My father spoke of him with such respect, always saying he was the most dedicated man he had ever met. He kept this journal as a record of those days, of all the small details the founder shared with him, the leather choices, the stitching techniques, even the principles he wanted the brand to stand for." The manager's eyes widened, feeling the weight of the journal's significance. Would you be willing to share some of those entries with us?" he asked, his voice filled with anticipation. He knew the employees and customers would be captivated by the insights into the founder's early vision, each entry adding depth to the story they were all a part of. The man nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "That's why I brought it," he said. "I think my father would have wanted these memories to live on, to inspire others the way they inspired him." That afternoon, the store gathered in a quiet semicircle as the man read from his father's journal. His voice was steady, yet emotional, carrying the words of a man who had once worked side by side with the founder. Each entry painted a vivid picture of those early days, long hours, late nights, and the uncompromising standards that the founder had instilled in every piece they crafted. They learned how the founder had been meticulous about quality, testing each product himself, before it left the workshop. He had insisted that every item be something he would be proud to own himself, believing that excellence was a form of respect for the people who would carry his creations. The words brought tears to some eyes, both customers and employees alike, as they listened to the founder's thoughts and philosophies, documented with love and respect by someone who had witnessed them firsthand. It was as if the founder himself were speaking to them through the journal, reminding them of the values that had built the brand. One entry struck a particularly deep chord with everyone present. The man's voice wavered slightly as he read it aloud. "It's not the brand name that gives value to a product. It's the care, the honesty, and the intention behind it. A piece created without heart is just an object, but a piece crafted with purpose and integrity carries a part of the maker's soul. I want every piece to carry that part of me." A hush fell over the group, each person reflecting on those words. They felt a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that they were not just preserving a legacy but were, in a way, extensions of it. The founders' values lived on through their actions, their dedication to quality, and the respect they showed each person who entered the store. The journal had breathed new life into their mission, reminding them why they were there. The young manager, deeply moved, thanked the man for sharing his father's memories with them. "This is a gift to all of us," he said sincerely. "We promise to carry these words forward, to honor your father and the founder, and to make sure that their vision lives on through everything we do." The man nodded, visibly touched. "Thank you," he said softly. "My father would be proud to know that his memories and the founders mean so much to all of you." As Legacy Day came to a close, the employees and customers lingered longer than usual, reluctant to leave the warmth of the shared experience. There was a profound connection in the room, an unspoken understanding that they were all part of something larger, something timeless. From that day forward, the journal became a treasured piece of the store's collection, kept on display alongside the founder's photograph. Customers would occasionally stop to read passages, finding inspiration and a reminder of the values that had built the brand. Employees, too, would read from it, especially on difficult days, finding strength and purpose in the founder's words, as though he were still guiding them from afar. The founder's legacy had grown beyond the walls of the store, connecting generations and strangers, linking them through shared values and respect. It was no longer just a brand or a store. It was a place of stories, a place of memories, and a place where craftsmanship, integrity, and kindness endured, each piece a continuation of the founder's timeless dream. And so, his legacy lived on, deeply rooted and thriving, touching countless lives, as he had always envisioned. As the journal became an integral part of the store, another transformation began to unfold. Visitors started leaving their own notes alongside the founder's photograph and the treasured journal. Small slips of paper, handwritten letters, and postcards began accumulating in a small tray that had been placed nearby, initially as an afterthought. These notes carried stories of personal milestones, a first job, an anniversary, a birthday, each linked to a piece from the brand. The founder's legacy had sparked something deeper, inviting people to share their lives in a way that felt intimate and profound. Some customers shared tales of resilience, recounting how a well-crafted wallet or a sturdy handbag had been their trusted companion through years of challenges and triumphs. Others wrote about the pride they felt when passing down a cherished piece to their children or grandchildren, carrying on the values the founder had instilled. Slowly, the tray of notes grew into a collection that spoke volumes, each note another layer to the legacy, a reminder that these items had become more than mere possessions. They were woven into the fabric of people's lives. The young manager noticed this phenomenon and decided to create a legacy wall near the founder's photograph. It was a simple yet elegant space, designed to hold these stories permanently, displaying them for all who visited. Each note was carefully mounted, arranged so that visitors could read them like an open book, a testament to the brand's impact on countless lives. Employees took turns curating the wall, reading each new story with respect before placing it alongside the others. The wall became a place of reflection and quiet inspiration, a testament to the founder's vision of creating items that carried meaning and memory. Over time, the legacy wall became a powerful attraction, drawing customers who came not only to shop but to connect with the lives and experiences of others. People would pause, sometimes for long moments, reading through the notes with a sense of awe and empathy, touched by the realization that a simple object could hold such depth. Some visitors, inspired by the stories they read, decided to leave their own, adding another voice to the chorus of memories. One evening, a young woman entered the store holding a small weathered handbag in her hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her expression a blend of sadness and determination. She approached the legacy wall and stood there quietly, reading the notes with care. After a few moments, she turned to the young manager who had noticed her from a distance. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I've come to leave something important." The manager nodded, offering her a warm, understanding smile. "Of course," he replied gently. "You're welcome to share anything you wish." She looked down at the handbag, brushing her fingers over its worn leather. "This was my mother's," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "She carried it everywhere. Every family gathering, every holiday, every special moment. She used to say it was her favorite thing, not because of its luxury, but because of the story behind it. She told me about the founder, how he valued craftsmanship, how he believed in making things that would last. She always said that this bag was like her, a little worn but still strong, still carrying all her memories." The young manager listened with a respectful silence, understanding the depth of her attachment to the item. "Would you like to leave a note for her?" he asked gently, gesturing to the legacy wall. "Or, if you prefer, you could leave the bag itself. It would be a beautiful tribute." The woman nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She pulled out a piece of paper she had brought with her, carefully written in her mother's handwriting, and gently placed it on the wall. Then, with a deep breath, she set the handbag on a small shelf that had recently been added below the wall, a place for particularly meaningful items that people wished to leave as part of the legacy. She took a step back, looking at the bag and the note, her face softened by a bittersweet smile. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice filled with gratitude. "It means so much to know that her story will live on here." The manager nodded, deeply moved. "Your mother's story is now a part of this place," he replied. "Her strength, her memories, they're woven into the legacy, just as the founder intended." The woman left quietly, leaving behind not just an item but a piece of her heart, a testament to the resilience and love that had shaped her mother's life. The employees gathered around the legacy wall after she left, silently honoring the new addition. The handbag and note remained there, a poignant reminder of the founder's belief that every piece carried a story worth telling. As the months passed, the legacy wall continued to grow, filled with letters, notes, and cherished items left by people from all walks of life. Each story held a unique meaning, but together they formed a collective narrative of connection, resilience, and respect, a living history that resonated deeply with everyone who visited. The wall, like the brand itself, had transcended its original purpose. It had become a symbol of unity, a place where people found strength in the shared experiences of others. One afternoon, an elderly man who had been a regular customer for years approached the young manager. He placed a simple leather-bound journal in the manager's hands, a gift from the founder himself decades ago, when the brand was still in its infancy. "I think it's time for this to be here," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of age. "It belongs with the stories." The manager held the journal with reverence, feeling the weight of its significance. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "We'll make sure it's honored, just as the founder would have wanted." And so the journal found its place on the legacy wall, nestled among the notes and items that now filled the space. Its pages carried the founder's own thoughts, his philosophies on craftsmanship, and his hopes for the brand's future, now woven into the shared tapestry of memories. The legacy wall had become the soul of the store, a testament to a vision that had outlasted time, connecting people through stories that transcended material worth. The founder's legacy was no longer just a story. It was alive, thriving in the lives and memories of everyone who entered, a constant reminder that true value lay not in luxury, but in the lasting impact of a shared human experience. And as each new visitor contributed their own piece to the wall, they too became part of the legacy, ensuring that it would endure for generations to come. As the legacy wall grew and became a cornerstone of the store, it attracted attention beyond the loyal customers and employees. Word of the brand's unique tribute to its founder spread, drawing media interest and stories in local papers about the transformation that had taken place within those walls. People came from different parts of the city, some even from out of town, eager to experience the store's rare blend of luxury and humility, to see the legacy wall with their own eyes, and to add their own stories to it. One day, a film crew arrived, having been inspired by the tales of the legacy wall and the founder's lasting impact. They wanted to capture the essence of the brand's journey, hoping to show the world that this was more than just a high-end store. It was a place of genuine human connection. The young manager, now the unofficial storyteller of the brand, welcomed them warmly and agreed to an interview, feeling honored to share the story that had come to define his own purpose. As the cameras rolled, the manager stood before the legacy wall, speaking not just to the crew but to everyone who had come to see it, to the customers who had contributed, and to the founder himself. He shared the story of the founder's unexpected visit, the quiet dignity with which he had revealed himself, and the lasting lesson he had left behind. His voice was steady but full of emotion as he recounted the shift that had taken place within the store and within himself. "We thought we were just selling products," he said, glancing at the items displayed nearby. "But we've learned that every piece has its own history, its own purpose, and every person who walks through these doors is part of that story. The legacy wall isn't just a tribute to our founder. It's a reminder of the values he lived by and the lives he touched." The film crew captured footage of the notes on the wall, the journal, and the treasured items left by customers. They interviewed visitors who had come to see the wall, each one sharing a different connection to the brand, a memory or feeling that resonated with them. An older woman, visiting with her granddaughter, pointed to a note she had left months ago about her first handbag from the founder's collection. "I've had it since I was young, and now my granddaughter will carry it," she said, smiling at the child beside her. "It's not just a bag, it's part of who we are." Another man, a former employee from the early days of the brand, held back tears as he shared his memories of working with the founder. "He taught us everything: integrity, respect, how to make something that lasts. This place feels like him even now," he said, his voice breaking with nostalgia. As the filming continued, more customers gathered around, forming an impromptu audience. The young manager invited people to share their stories, creating an open conversation where memories, laughter, and even a few tears were shared among strangers. The legacy wall had become a place where stories weren't just displayed. They were exchanged, connecting people across generations and backgrounds in ways none of them had anticipated. Once the interviews concluded, the film crew gathered their equipment, thanking the young manager and the staff. Before they left, the director paused, turning to the manager with a look of genuine admiration. "I've filmed a lot of brands," he said, "but I've never seen anything like this. Your founder's vision, it's alive here, people can feel it." The manager smiled, deeply touched. "That's all he ever wanted," he replied, "to create something meaningful, something that would last." When the film was released, it captured the attention of a much larger audience than they'd expected. People were moved by the story of the founder, by the brand's commitment to honoring his legacy, and by the community that had formed around the legacy wall. Visitors began traveling from even farther, bringing their own mementos and memories, each hoping to add their voice to the wall. With the influx of visitors, the store found itself transformed once again. The employees, who had once been focused solely on sales, now saw themselves as keepers of these stories, welcoming each person with a renewed sense of purpose. They listened to each customer's tale with reverence, helping them find a place on the wall for their contribution, ensuring that each story became part of the brand's living history. One evening, as the store was preparing to close, an elderly woman entered, leaning on a cane and carrying a small, carefully wrapped box. Her eyes were filled with quiet determination as she approached the legacy wall, pausing to look at the founder's photograph. The young manager, noticing her gaze, approached gently. "Good evening, ma'am. Is there something special you'd like to add to the wall?" he asked, sensing the importance of her visit. She nodded, her eyes moist with emotion. "Yes," she replied softly. "This box contains a pair of gloves. Leather gloves my husband bought from your founder many years ago. He wore them through every winter until he passed. They meant a lot to him and to me. I thought, maybe they belong here now." The manager's heart swelled with empathy. "Of course," he said gently. "It would be an honor to place them here." Carefully, the woman unwrapped the gloves, revealing their worn but well-maintained leather, polished with care and years of use. She placed them on the shelf beneath the founder's photograph, pausing to touch them one last time. She then pulled a small note from her pocket, written in a slightly shaky hand, and placed it beside the gloves. It read, "For Harold, who carried warmth through every winter, may your legacy live on here." The employees and a few lingering customers watched in silence, touched by the woman's tribute. As she stepped back, the young manager felt a profound sense of respect for her gesture. She was not just leaving a pair of gloves, she was entrusting a piece of her life, a memory of love and devotion, to the place where it would be honored forever. As the store closed for the night, the employees gathered around the new addition to the legacy wall, reflecting on the depth and beauty of the community they had become a part of. Each item on the wall was more than just an object. It was a story, a memory, a piece of someone's life that had become part of a larger, shared legacy. That night, the young manager locked up the store, feeling the quiet strength of the founder's vision surrounding him. This brand had become more than he could have ever imagined, a place where lives intersected, where memories lived on, and where the founder's dream continued to thrive, one story at a time. He knew, as he left, that the legacy would endure, not just in the leather and stitching, but in the hearts and memories of all those who carried a part of it forward. And so the founder's spirit remained, quietly watching over the legacy wall, guiding the lives it touched, ensuring that his timeless vision of quality, respect, and connection would carry on, woven into every story, every cherished piece, and every memory that came through those doors. In the months following the elderly woman's heartfelt tribute, the legacy wall continued to evolve, each edition weaving a new layer of meaning into the brand's story. The employees found themselves deeply committed to preserving the wall's growing collection. They tended to each item with care, arranging notes, cherished objects, and photographs with the same reverence as one would tend to a family album. The founder's vision, once confined to the craftsmanship of each item, now resonated in the spirit of the community that had formed around his legacy. One day, the young manager had an idea that he knew could honor the founder's legacy in an even more profound way. He gathered the employees after hours, sharing his thoughts with a tone of excitement tempered by humility. "We've built something truly special here," he began, gesturing to the legacy wall. "But I believe we could do more to extend this community, to share the founder's vision beyond these walls." The employees listened intently, sensing the importance of his words. "What if we create an event," he continued, "something that brings together everyone who has been touched by the founder's legacy, a celebration of stories, of memories, of everything the brand has come to represent. We could call it Founders Day, an annual gathering where people from near and far can share their stories, reconnect, and honor what this brand means to them." The employees exchanged excited glances, the idea resonating deeply with each of them. Founders Day could be more than a celebration. It could be a living tribute to the man who had shaped their lives and the lives of countless others. They began brainstorming ways to bring the idea to life, discussing everything from inviting families who had contributed to the legacy wall to creating exhibits that showcased the journal, the gloves, and other cherished items left by visitors. Over the next few months, the employees worked tirelessly to organize Founders Day. Word spread quickly, and soon enough, customers from all over expressed their desire to attend. The store was abuzz with anticipation, and as the day approached, the staff transformed the space, preparing areas where people could sit together, share stories, and view the legacy wall with all its treasured mementos. Finally, Founders Day arrived. The store was filled with a quiet energy as families, friends, and visitors began to gather. The legacy wall, now a focal point of the event, was adorned with fresh flowers and softly lit, each note and object gleaming under the gentle lights. A large banner hung above reading, "Founders Day, celebrating the legacy of love, craftsmanship, and connection." The young manager opened the event with a heartfelt speech, his voice filled with gratitude. "Today we gather to honor a man who believed that his work was more than just luxury. It was a way to connect people, to bring stories and lives together. Each item here carries a piece of him, a promise to uphold quality, respect, and integrity. And every story on this wall, every cherished item is a testament to the power of that promise." As he finished, the room was quiet, each person reflecting on the gravity of the day. Slowly, individuals and families began to step forward, sharing their stories. An older man recounted how his father had bought him his first briefcase from the founder himself, a rite of passage that had stayed with him through his own career. A mother and daughter shared memories of a handbag that had been passed down through 3 generations, each of them adding their own chapter to its story. As the stories unfolded, laughter mingled with tears, and strangers became friends, united by the brand's impact on their lives. People marveled at the items displayed, each with a note or photograph, capturing the shared history of a brand that had evolved into something far greater than its name. Parents introduced their children to the founder's story, explaining the values of dedication, kindness, and connection that the brand embodied. One young boy, clutching a small wallet that had belonged to his grandfather, approached the young manager with wide eyes. "My grandpa said this wallet is special because it was made by someone who cared about making good things," he said with a serious expression, repeating his grandfather's words as if they held the weight of the world. The manager knelt down, smiling at the boy with warmth and pride. "Your grandpa was absolutely right," he replied. "The founder cared very much about every piece he created, and now that wallet carries his legacy. And today, you're part of that story too." As the day progressed, the air was filled with a unique warmth, an unmistakable sense of togetherness. The legacy wall had become a symbol of unity, a space where people could honor the past while building connections that would carry the founder's dream forward. When the day drew to a close, the young manager once again took the floor, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you all for being here today, for sharing your memories, and for keeping this legacy alive. Today, we haven't just celebrated a brand, we've celebrated the lives and stories that are part of it. Each one of you is now a part of the founder's vision, a vision that lives on in everything we do, in every memory we share." The crowd responded with applause, some wiping away tears, others nodding in agreement. As people began to make their way home, many lingered by the legacy wall, leaving new notes and reading the ones they hadn't yet seen. It was as if each visitor left a part of themselves behind, contributing to a legacy that felt like it would endure indefinitely. As the store doors finally closed on the first Founders Day, the young manager and the employees gathered around the legacy wall, feeling the weight of the day's significance. They understood now, more than ever, the profound responsibility they held, to honor a legacy that went beyond craftsmanship, to preserve a spirit of love and respect that connected them all. And as they stood there, surrounded by the notes, photographs, and cherished items, they knew that the founder's vision had truly become timeless, woven into the lives and memories of every person who had walked through those doors. His legacy was no longer just a part of the brand. It was a part of each of them, living on with every story, every memory, and every treasured item that filled the wall. The legacy wall had transformed into something far greater than a tribute. It had become a place where lives touched and intertwined, a living testament to the values that had shaped the brand. And they knew, deep in their hearts, that as long as the legacy wall stood, so would the founder's dream, eternal, cherished, and alive in the memories of all who believed in it. As the days passed following the first Founders' Day, the store's atmosphere became a quiet celebration of the founder's legacy. The legacy wall continued to grow, a constant reminder of the lives touched by his vision. Each morning, the young manager would arrive early, taking a few minutes to read the new notes that had been left overnight. They ranged from heartfelt letters of gratitude to simple phrases like, "Thank you for this piece of my journey." Each note strengthened the store's sense of purpose, turning the space into something sacred, something more than a place of business. Visitors came from far and wide, not just to shop, but to be part of this living history. Every customer who entered was treated as part of the brand's family, each interaction shaped by the respect and compassion instilled by the founder's legacy. People came to view the legacy wall, sharing their own stories and finding strength in the stories of others. For those who had left notes, the wall was a place to revisit, to see their own story held within the collective memory of the brand. One morning, the young manager was greeted by a letter waiting on the counter, addressed to the store. It bore the distinctive handwriting of the founder himself. The staff gathered around as the manager opened it, his hands trembling slightly with a mixture of excitement and reverence. The letter read, "To all those who have tended to this store, who have kept alive the spirit of craftsmanship, kindness, and connection, thank you. I have seen the legacy wall, felt its impact, and watched as each of you carried my dream further than I ever could have imagined. This wall, this collection of memories and shared experiences, is exactly what I had hoped for. It is a place where people can remember that beauty is found in the hands that create, the hearts that care, and the connections that endure. I am no longer just a creator, but a part of each of you, of everyone who has chosen to share a part of themselves here. This wall is a reminder that no dream is too small, no legacy too humble. Thank you for making my vision a reality. May this place continue to thrive, to be a source of strength, love, and resilience for all who enter. With deep gratitude, yours always, the founder." The room was silent as they finished reading, each person deeply moved by the founder's words. The young manager, now visibly emotional, looked up at his colleagues, his voice thick with gratitude. "This letter, it's a gift, a reminder that what we're doing matters, that our work has a purpose beyond ourselves." One of the employees, wiping away a tear, nodded. "He's trusted us with his legacy, and we've made it our own. I think he'd be proud of what this place has become." The manager carefully framed the founder's letter and placed it at the center of the legacy wall. Visitors and employees alike came to read it, each finding a unique connection within the words. The letter became a guiding light, a beacon of the founder's unwavering belief in the goodness that people could create together. The legacy wall, now complete with the founder's final message, took on an almost sacred role, inspiring everyone who saw it. As the years passed, Founders' Day became an annual celebration, each event building upon the last, bringing in people from across generations who had all been touched by the brand. The store was no longer just a place to buy finely crafted items. It had become a place of pilgrimage where stories, lives, and legacies intersected. Customers who once came for luxury now came for connection, to be part of something greater than themselves, something lasting. The young manager grew older, eventually passing on his role to someone who had worked beside him for years. As he handed over the keys, he felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that he was leaving behind not just a thriving store, but a living testament to the founder's dream. The legacy wall had transcended the brand, becoming a symbol of community, love, and remembrance that extended beyond any single person. Decades later, The store still stood, and the legacy wall had only grown. Generations of visitors had left their stories, each one building upon the last. The founder's photograph remained at the heart of the wall, surrounded by notes, letters, and cherished items that reflected the lives he had touched. His presence was felt by everyone who walked through those doors, his spirit woven into the very fabric of the store. And so, his legacy continued to flourish, not only in the finely crafted items, but in the countless lives connected by his vision. The legacy wall stood as a reminder that dreams, when built with love, integrity, and respect, endure far beyond the life of the dreamer. It was proof that one person's dedication could inspire generations, creating a legacy that would live on, cherished and celebrated forever.